Hello, bearded bee people. Welcome back to Bean KBs. Today I'm going to chat about how many hives we keep per yard and how much land we feel is necessary to keep any hives there at all. I know some people who keep bees in the city of Detroit, and I know some people who keep bees on rooftops in New York City. So probably there's some misconceptions about how much land you have to have or how many bees you can keep near your house. Either way, we're going to talk about all those things today on B&KBs. The first thing to consider in terms of like how much land you have to keep bees are some local ordinances. If you're wondering as to whether your neighborhood is going to allow you to keep bees on whatever little patch of property you have, the first thing to do is to get a hold of a city official or figure out in one way or another what you are allowed to do on your property. The next thing to consider when considering if your spot is good for having some bees are your neighbors. The comfort level of your neighbors with bees is going to be a limiting factor for you as to how many bees you can keep or where you can keep them on your property. When people have an idea of, number one, whether they're allergic or not, or that their bees are bothering their dog in a dog water dish, which we've had problems with before, those are ideas that you're likely not going to be able to dissuade them from. So if you have somebody like that, I really, really highly recommend searching for other patches of property to keep some bees. We have bees at our house, but we also keep bees in what we call outyards. And these are just patches of property that other people own that may want it to be used by bees, may want some added production to their garden, or maybe they're just looking for a couple of jars of honey at the end of the year. Either way, we don't usually pay anything other than honey to get into these yards, and all we ever do to find them are Facebook or Craigslist posts. So if you'd have some angry neighbors or some neighbors with little kids that think that they're allergic or they've got pets and they're going to be a problem, my advice to you there is to put some posts on some local online forums and see if you can find a more agreeable patch of property to keep your bees. If your neighbors are cool, maybe they're not existent, maybe they're across a big patch of trees or something, you've got a little secluded area of some woods, then I think you should keep bees there. I think that a lot of people are concerned a little bit too much about what's local in terms of like flowers and water sources. The only real way that you're going to be able to figure out whether your yard can handle a particular amount of bees is to put bees there. Because you can see tons of different flowers all the time, like roses and honeysuckle bushes, that bees just tend to avoid because of one reason or another. So just because you see flowers there doesn't mean that that's going to be food for your bees. And just because you don't see flowers there doesn't mean that your bees aren't going to be able to find food. So don't make a decision on whether or not you're going to keep bees on your property based on what you yourself see. Let the bees figure that out themselves. In terms of urban environments, as I said earlier, I know people who keep bees right in the heart of the city of Detroit. I also know of an avid group of beekeepers that keep bees on tops of skyscrapers in New York City. So don't limit yourself to what you can see in your horizon based on food and water availability, because these bees are going to fly a 3-mile circle and going to visit flowers that you never thought bees would ever visit. So definitely, if you have agreeable neighbors and some space to yourself, keep bees there. Once you've found your patch of property, or you've decided your own yard is a good spot for bees, one thing I always consider here in the Northern Hemisphere, especially in areas where it gets cold during the winter, is that they have ample view of the southern sky. A yard that doesn't have any view of the southern sky is likely to be encased in snow and ice far longer into the spring than a colony or a yard that has ample view of the southern sun. So definitely make sure that you have view of the southern sky. If you can have some type of windbreak in between your colonies and the prevailing winds, which for us when we were living in the lower peninsula was always from the west, from Lake Michigan. If you can create that windbreak or have some type of tree line in between there, that's good. I think that the southern sky view is more important, however. Your colonies can sit pretty much as close as you can fit them to each other. A lot of beginning beekeepers are concerned about the bees getting confused as to which is their hive or how many feet they have to be apart for one misconception or another. But if you ever look at a commercial yard or look at any of our videos at any of our yards, a lot of beekeepers just smash them right up next to each other. And there's a lot of advantage in that way. In one case, you can fit 4 to a pallet. In another case, you can have a cluster of heat for heat maintenance and generation throughout the winter. And you have less areas that you've got to walk to and visit in order to be able to work all of your colonies. Controlling bears in the lower peninsula of Michigan, and then especially up here in the upper peninsula, is essential. It's as essential as having solid boxes around your bees. It's as essential as having covers over the frames. It's as essential as any other effort to keep your bees alive, because if you do not have a bear deterrent, and by that I mean a bear fence, you are going to be visited if you're in an area with bears. You're not going to be happy as to how they leave your bees. They are not tidy beekeepers. You can get a bear fence at Tractor Supply. There's a bunch of different places you can get them. There's different kinds. We run the solar fences because we don't have all of our colonies near power outlets. And the 10-mile solar fences tend to work pretty well with 2 hot wires. If bears have visited your bees in the past and you're setting up a fence in order to deter them from coming back, you do have to haze them. This is an unfortunate aspect of things, but those bears have so much fur that they can go right underneath that electric fence and not get shocked at all. So if that is the case, if you're concerned about bears showing up to your yard and going through your fence, you have to haze them by putting something enticing on one of the hot wires. Some people have used bacon and wrapped uncooked bacon strips on a hot wire, but what we do is just a strip of aluminum foil that we crimp over it and rub peanut butter on. We have had a yard visited at least 3 times by a particular bear and then done this peanut butter hazing, and then we have pictures of this bear directly outside of the fence, not making any effort to get inside. So once again, if you live in an area with bears, you have to invest in a bear fence. Making an effort to keep bears out in almost any other way, I almost assure you, will be met with disappointment. So make the investment, keep it on, and keep your bees safe from these incredibly large and destructive predators. Other than space in your yard and how many hives you can fit into a particular little area, you do have to consider how far away from your house and neighboring houses they should be. Now, as far as your house is concerned, I don't really think that there's any set distance. It's just about how comfortable you are with bees and how angry you think your bees are going to get in the fall. I wouldn't advocate setting up a colony to where you have to walk in front of it every day to get to your car to go to work. That's likely to create a scenario where you get stung a couple of unnecessary times going to work in the morning in the fall. But in terms of keeping it away from neighboring houses, I do think at least a couple 100 yards is necessary. Once again, this is just so that they don't have constant sight of these bees on their things. If they have a spigot outside of the back of their house for a garden hose, or if they've got a pool, or as I said, a water dish for a pet, or any other thing that would possibly entice bees, you really do want to have them a distance away to where they're not seeing this every day. If they do see this every day, you're just increasing the likelihood that they're going to complain. And once they start complaining, you just have to start moving your bees out, because there's nothing you can do to dissuade these people from thinking that their bees are harming their kids or their dog or whatever. So keep your bees at least a couple 100 yards away from your neighboring houses. They can be as close to your house as you feel comfortable with. They'll fly right over and around any barrier that is in front of them, so you don't really have to be concerned in that sense. So as long as your neighbors are far enough away and you think you've got enough land to set up some bees, the only other criteria that I consider in terms of how many bees am I going to place in a yard are how many do I want to work that day. I don't like to have them set up to where I've got to work half of this one and then a third of that one. I want to be able to show up to a yard and work all of those colonies in a reasonable amount of time. And I also want the drive to be worth it. I don't want to drive 30 or 40 minutes to go work 10 hives. So I'll weigh all of those options and usually set out between 20 and 40 colonies, depending on how far I'm driving and how close they are to other yards or other bees. If for one reason or another you find that your yard is not working out, whether they're not finding food the way your other yards are, or you've got a neighbor that is being a problem, or you have a bear that just won't quit messing with stuff, or any other thing that you think is going to continue to be a problem going forward, utilize that Facebook or Craigslist post and find another yard. It is incredibly frustrating to try to work through one of these problem areas with a landowner or a landowner's neighbor, or any situation where you've got to try to please these people. So if there's a problem, if there's something that isn't right, if you can't get your truck all the way to your colonies, if you don't like having to drive right past this person's front door and they want to talk every time you show up to the yard, move them out and cut your losses, because you're going to find it easier to get out to your bees and work your colonies and be calm and happy in your beekeeping if you just cut your losses and don't deal with these difficult people when they show themselves to be difficult. So I hope this video answered any questions you may have about how we get yards, or if you can keep bees in your little patch of property. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. I'd be happy to chat with you, or otherwise I'm sure there's other subscribers that'll have some great advice for you. If you want to see other videos as they come out on B&K Bees in the future, click subscribe. I'd appreciate the heck out of that. If you really, really want to be a big help and you want to help financially for us to create videos going forward, you can go to patreon.com/bkbees. There's 3 tiers of support over there, but either way, you'll get access to some message boards and some direct contact with me about future B&K Bees video content. Either way, I just appreciate you being here and watching this video, and I hope you get out there and have some fun with your bees. See ya.